not forgetting we have Daesh, we have terrorism, we have American occupation, we have demographic changes tremendously, and we have also the environmental changes and the rentier economy of the oil sector. So these are all things we have to take into account. And we're not in a region which is democratic, nor are we in a region which is harmoniously have embraced East Europe versus West Europe perspective. We're not. So there is that element as well. That's one dimension.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lukman. Dr. Diya, Dr. Lukman.
I need one element. I need to talk about the parties. Just an element of the parties. By the way, I mean, it's not a joke, it's true. Talk about political players. You know, I've recently watched 007 latest movie. I don't remember the title, but I would think something along the lines, one never dies. No, in Iraq, politicians never dies. We always have the same politicians for 20 years. Until he physically passed away, he's still active politically. Or he still wants to be a prime minister. Or he still wants it. So one never dies. Just one small point, important to cover. I joined the party at the age of 17. I joined the Da'wah party. And just for you guys, it's not a golf club. It's an actual, you literally get executed, you and your family annihilated if government find out you are in that party. But if you ask me now, do we have parties? The answer, strictly speaking, no. Let me go in details. Ideology is not an issue where people join the party. There are no advisory councils to any of the Iraqi parties. No Iraqi party has a body or an entity with it called an advisory. Iraqi parties do not have association with think tanks. No think tanks are associated with parties. Okay? So if you don't have an ideology, if you don't have an actual entity which produces papers, white papers, green papers, brown papers, whatever you want, and if you don't have founding fathers for it, so now parties is just a collective of people to leech on the state. And this is even for the Da'wah party, who is supposed to be, 70 years old or 60-year-old party, which is the oldest, or the communist. They are the two same. So there is an issue there. However, the good news, and I'll finish with this, the ground is ripe for an actual party. It can sweep the ground in Iraq if there's an actual party. The demand is so high, the need is so high. If a collective of people get their act together, they can have a tremendous effect in Iraq. And I said, numbers only get you a seat at the table. Thereafter, the weight of your numbers is somewhat irrelevant. And we saw that historically. I'm not here who has 99% veto, who has 1%. But if you have 1% and you can have a veto, that's a veto. It's irrelevant as to what's your political weight now. I mean, China had a veto in 47, 48, and now they have a veto. But it's still same China in one way. So it's to do with how do you compare. I was not comparing, contrasting the two. My point was, when you view Iraq, you need to view it from a social, political, economical, and others as well. Even spiritual dimension. People don't view that. The problem we have from a Western perspective is you look at the institutions and you say, okay, this institution has the authority and therefore they should have the influence. In Iraq, that's not the issue. Whether you have influence is irrelevant. Masoud Barzani do not have a government position. He does not have a KRG position. But I would be extremely surprised if the current president or prime minister in the Kurdish region will go against Masoud Barzani. He would not. That's one.
KRG is Kurdish
regional government.
Kurdish regional government.
Well, we talk about Iraq and we're forgetting that Sistani does not even have an Iraqi nationality. Sistani, Grand Ayatollah Sistani, does not even have an Iraqi nationality. He does not vote. But here we talk about the spiritual, we talk about the religious, we talk about, call it metaphysical, call it something else. this is what you guys need to comprehend as to the complexities, contradiction of the Iraqi political, social dimension. So don't view that. Sistani, by the way, I mean, we talk about the influence he has, yes, but let's not also forget. Recently, he asked for the participation in the election, and that was suspect at best maybe 3 or 5% increase as a result of the Sistani call for increased participation in the election. Why? Because people no longer associated Sistani with the current setup. They said, okay, Sistani is calling for participation, but it's too late and we will give up on this political system. The risk we have to this is that this current Republic of Iraq, we're talking about it, does need to substantially to either answer the questions or change accordingly. That's the nature of life cycle of states and nations. That's the key question. Can it survive? How do we go and give it the shock for its life to revitalize itself? That's where you guys need to help us out with. The KDP, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, had 32 parliamentarians elected. The PUK, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, which is Imam Jalal's old party, which the president represents, has 15. And the miscellaneous, they called it Tahalif Kurdistan, or the Kurdistan Unity or Kurdistan affiliation, they had, I think, 17. But this miscellaneous is representative of roughly 7 parties, Islamist and non-Islamist. Some of them are from Quran, from the couple of Islamist and nationalist or liberal-minded. So there is a split, 3-way split. However, the historical perspective is always Masoud Barzani, who is the president of the party, not the president of the KRG any longer, but he is an influential, or I could say with confidence. You have to bear in mind, in Iraq, 3 people have vetoes on things. Masoud Barzani can have a strong, influential, historical figure, historical leader, and therefore he has a strong say. And Sayyid Muqtada Sadr, also as a national leader, as a Shia leader, as a cult leader, as whatever, a strong leader, has a say, and the Grand Ayatollah Sistani as well. These are the 3 people. The reason is that these 3 people have deep root in the culture, structure of the society. And not have even a government position. All 3 do not have a government position. But all 3 are the only 3 with what I call self-organic strength. They're not because of the Iranian connection or American connection or because of the party or tribal. No, they are the 3 people with entrenched root, and you could see it. One is nationalist, or one is religious, and one is culture versus ethnicity. Just a flavor. And I'm going to write a paper soon because I want Iraqis to be aware that it's not an issue of the constitution of the Weimar. My understanding is what's his name? Weber, or Max Weber was engaged and so on. So it's not the issue of that, it's more to do with the structure. But I'd like to disagree with my friend, and maybe this is the first time, by giving practical examples of the inabilities of minorities to participate in the government. I myself is considered as a minority, being a Kurd and a Shia. Although you would think that I'm supposed to represent most of Iraq, but in reality, no, because I have the label of Feili. Feili is an ethnicity name. So my surname is an ethnicity. And therefore, it's near impossible for me to get senior positions, even if I'm a party member for 30, 40 years, because of the name. So you are branded by the name. So it's impossible for a Christian to be a president, or a Mandayan to be a foreign minister, or a Turkmen to be speaker of the parliament, unless people don't know he's a Turkmen. That's a key issue. If people don't know your ethnicity, all they know is that you're of this political background, fine. But if they know, in reality, I have to say this in practice, our previous president, or the one after Imam Jalal, was from a Feili, but he had a veto because he was from a Feili. He's a Shia and a Kurd. And the Kurds did not disagree for him to be, but the Shia did not want the Shia to be the president. Because this means anybody could be a president, anybody could be a prime minister, and the Shia did not want to give this right to others. I don't know if you follow the example I'm giving now.
Yes.
So, if you don't follow, it's a very tragic and funny position, is that you don't want others to take, you don't want, for example, my own boss, Fuad Hussein, was a Shia, Safari like me, but people didn't know he was a Fuad Hussein, the Shia, and there people said, okay, he could be a foreign minister because he's a Kurd. Although Masoud Barzani would say, I don't care he's a Sunni or a Shia or a Kurd, I'm giving him this position. In reality, he only got it because people didn't know he was a Shia. So you have to bear that in mind. So it's a bit more ironic and it's a bit more tragic than we're trying to paint it here. Because people at the very end view this in a very binary way. At the core of it, it's a binary way. Is he one of me or is he not one of us?